right, doesn't it? Can you see the cape? Let's do it.
What is up, people? My name is Ketmar. I'm the creator of Developer Habits, a YouTube channel for software engineers interested in growth mindset, developer lifestyle, and technical tutorials. In this channel, I tend to interview other developers to give you more perspective what the life of developers is all about. And today we have Mr. Jordan here, or as some people know him, Mr. Morris.
Yep. Hi, everybody. I'm a independent game developer who actually didn't know how to code anything about like 1 year ago. So over the last year, I've learned how to make or how to code, but only specifically for games and stuff like that. So hopefully this interview will give you some insights into my story and whatnot.
Yeah, and before we get started, I'd like to say that I know Jordan for almost 4 years, right?
Pretty much,
We
yeah.
actually joined Pipedrive together, and you came here as a customer solutions expert, but now, as you said, you're a game developer, which is super awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm no pro game developer, but it's still cool nonetheless.
But I mean, we can actually start from your background, like who you are, where you come from, and how did you get into gaming?
So, since like a young age, I've always been into like drawing and stuff like that. I've always played games as well. Like I think my first game was probably Pokemon on the Game Boy Color. Um, and yeah, basically I've just always drawn. I went to study architecture as well as like my bachelor's, but I didn't quite finish the bachelor's. I still have like a year or two to go. But after that, then I joined Pipedrive as a customer solutions expert, which is basically just customer support. And after a year of working there, I was helping out the marketing team, and then I transitioned over to marketing, which is where, well, I mean, we already joined like the same day, but
Yeah.
it was funny because like when I transitioned over to marketing, it was to basically your team.
Yeah, yeah.
So
We have some good memories.
so yeah, and then after that, I've been like in marketing ever since, so I still have that kind of position now. But over the last year, I've been getting into this game development stuff more.
Hmm. So, as a like your daily job doesn't involve any programming or game development or anything, right?
No, so what I actually do now in Pipedrive is I manage the website through a CMS, so like basically something like WordPress, right? So all of the coding and developing you guys do, and then I just kind of use what you've built to make pages through the CMS.
Hmm. But now, how did you transfer, or how did you get interested in game development or coding in general?
Well, to be honest, it was kind of like I just had a really bad day at work, and then I just got home and I thought to myself, I need to do something else with my life. And for some reason, I don't even know how, but it just popped into my mind just to like, yeah, I'm gonna make a video game. And then
Did you know anything
no,
about game
like
development at that point?
nothing. So I did what any normal person would do, and I just went to YouTube and just typed in how to make a game, and that's it, or how to
And
make a
that was
video
1 year
game.
ago.
Yeah, that was pretty much 1 year ago. A little bit more than 1 year ago now. I think it must be like 13 months, but yeah, pretty much.
So there's no like big grandiose story behind it. It's just like you had an idea you wanted to execute and you just jumped to YouTube.
Basically, like, yeah, I didn't have like a concrete idea, right, of what game I wanted to make. I just thought I wanted to make a game, like whatever it is, just wanted to do it. And I found like this video on YouTube, which is like this whole kind of playlist. I think it was about 10 videos in total, like about 20 minutes each one. And by the end of it, you would have like a running game with like an end screen, a die screen, and a restart and a score and stuff like this. Very simple game with like a cube which you just slide across and dodge obstacles and stuff like that. Even though like each video was only like 20 minutes long, it still took me like 2 hours to do just one video because I had no idea what I was doing. Like the program, or the game engine that I use is Unity, and the programming language is C#. And honestly, like the only thing I had touched a little bit was HTML because of obviously working with the website. So I had no idea what was going on. Like I was just literally copying it by letter, just following the tutorial.
So how did you approach learning or following those tutorials? Did you like, I mean, there are tons of different aspects here. There's the visual part, there's the programming parts. And if you didn't know anything about programming, for example, did the tutorials go really technical, or what were the main aspects that they covered, and how did you follow along?
Yeah, so there are really good YouTube channels out there which are like targeted for beginners. I would say in hindsight, they don't do like a great job explaining the code. Um, so for a long time, I was just following them basically, and I didn't really understand the code at all. So after a while, I started to feel a bit like bad about myself because I was feeling like, what am I doing? I don't really understand this. So I tried to look more into learning about C sharp and stuff like that, but specifically C sharp, but it was really hard, to be honest. And luckily, I came across another game engine which is like super simple to use, and you just basically make Game Boy games, and it has no code involved at all. But what it does make you think about is like the logic. So it made you think about like if statements, it made you think about actions and triggers and stuff like this. So I felt like that was like a big milestone or stepping stone for me, because I could not worry about C sharp and like the language, so to say, but I could focus on more just like conceptually how it should work logically. And then after that, I found it much more easier to learn C sharp and just to use like watch other people's tutorials, download existing projects that already had like C sharp scripts and stuff like that, so I could kind of study them and see how it works for other people. And I think that's about it. It's just after time and a lot of trial and error. Like I think most of mine is trial and error. Like I remember I was doing stuff for a long time and I didn't know that the code read line by line. So like if you put something like some sort of action above something else and it kind of canceled this one, or some, you know, like you could get some weird stuff happening, like where like stuff just overrides each other. But I remember like maybe like 3 months in I figured that out. But it's just from like trial and error, and that's it. So
That's the thing, like some people like to learn programming or anything, you know, by reading different kind of articles and tutorials and really, you know, grasp everything before they start trying. And then there are people like, I dare to say, me and you, who just, you know, learn through trial and error. And especially in gaming, I assume that once you do something, you get this visual feedback, this interactive feedback right away.
Yeah, for sure. Like I used to spend maybe hours just fiddling around with like what I was saying before, like moving stuff up and down, maybe adding like a boolean here, or like I don't know, all sorts of stuff, just for like very simple things. So like that's like you said, like I think that's the way I just prefer to learn, is just by doing and then seeing what works and what doesn't.
So do you understand correctly? It wasn't about actually programming. It was about making a game or creating a game, and programming was just one set of skill that you needed to learn in order to do that.
Basically, yeah. Because with making a game, you have to think about the art, the animation, even up to like UI elements a little bit, and kind of just general feel of games as well. Because I think it's quite easy to make a very rigid sort of game, but to make it feel good while you play it, like snappy controls and the character moves almost naturally, because it is a game after all. But like you know, like it's just responsive, because I remember my very first game was like buggy as hell. You pressed a button and then he jumped about a second later. It was horrible. But like now that I'm a bit better, I think those things are important. But I really like coding, to be honest. I think it's very satisfying. Like I was looking for something in my life like that, and it's even more satisfying when it's paired with game development, because you can almost see the immediate reward, right? Like you code something and you can literally test it and you can see if it works or not. So I think it's pretty cool like that.
Would you consider programming as a future career option?
I don't know. I don't know yet. I'd prefer just to focus on the game side of things because I like the art and animation as well. So I feel like it's like a nice round package for me.
So in the beginning, you were doing tutorials, you were building some random games, but now you actually have a Kickstarter campaign going on for your own game.
Yep.
Haiku the Robot, or
Yep.
how do you pronounce it?
Yep. Haiku the Robot.
Yeah. So tell us about that. How did you come up with the idea, and what actually, how did it start?
So after I did that first game, that one with the cube where I just followed this tutorial and that's it. I think more or less in that time I had this kind of idea of I wanted to do like a bigger game, right? But when you look online, everybody tells you to do smaller games. It's like it's like the worst thing that you can do is try and start off big. Always try and start off small and slowly build up, which I did. But like Haiku came into existence around that time, more or less, because I could do pixel art, I could do animation, so I kind of started to create kind of assets for the game in that sense. And also I put it on social media to just kind of test the market to see if like anybody would be receptive to the kind of visuals that I was doing and stuff like that.
So all the pixel art,
Yeah.
all the visuals are done by you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite awesome.
Yeah. So that adds like a lot of time. So but yeah. So like when I'm making these games, it's quite nice because I don't have to focus on development only. When I get bored of that, or I get frustrated, because you do get frustrated when things don't work out, then you can just switch over to pixel art and animation. And even in animation, it's frustrating at times because I do it like frame by frame, like this traditional sort of animation style. And when it doesn't look nice or I'm not happy with it, I get frustrated, and then I can just switch back over to coding. So it's like this nice balance, I feel. But yeah, like Haiku came into existence around that time. I was still like a complete noob developer. Like I was still not understanding the code, and it was buggy. And so I've kind of followed that advice of doing like smaller projects. And I did a few mobile games, which are, in my eyes, are like small projects, and also some game jams, which are a bit like a hackathon, right? But instead, you build a small game out of it. So instead of like 48 hours and you do one sort of product or a feature, then you do a small game.
So you
And
did
those
it
are great.
during the weekends?
Yeah, most of the time they take part in the weekend, where it's like no sleep over the weekend. And
come back to work on Monday.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely dead. But yeah, the game jams are really fun, and they're really good because I like them, especially because they make you like cut down the scope of the game that you want to do, focus on the most important, and I just find that they're a really good way to kind of test yourself again on how much you've learned, like how much you've progressed. So I think they're really fun.
But regarding Haiku, so you started small, but incrementally started building on top of what you had already done, or how did it go?
So all these other smaller games that I was just talking about are like completely different. They're nothing related to Haiku except from two. I must have done like 8 small games over the last year. Only 2 of those were related to Haiku. The other ones were just like, because when you start out, you have all these ideas that you want to do, and you see some sort of cool mechanic on YouTube, and you're like, oh, I wonder if I could do that myself, and try and code it and stuff like that. So yeah, I kind of just got all of that urge out of my system to try new stuff and do new stuff. And then after about 8 months, I kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to go back to my main project, or the project that I had dreamed of at the beginning, which was Haiku, and just focus on that.
When you returned to Haiku, like,
oh, for sure,
full time, how much had you progressed from the development perspective, especially?
Immensely. Like I remember I tried to do a boss, okay? And a boss is probably one of the hardest things you can do in a game anyway. But I tried to do a boss like 3 or 4 months into learning, or well, maybe it was a bit longer, maybe it was like 6 months into learning how to game development. And it was horrible. It was just terrible. And after like and that's the part that really gets you down, you know, because you feel like, oh my god, what am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing, you know. But it's because you try and go aim too slightly too high. So it's kind of like good to take a step back, work on these other projects, and then when I went back to it, I was like, oh yeah, this is not easy, but it's much more easy, you know. Like
it's doable.
it's yeah, much more doable. And I would say if you check the demo and the boss in the demo, like the feedback that I've got from it is insanely positive. Like everybody just absolutely loves the boss because it, like from a game design perspective as well, it's kind of a it makes you constantly move, which I think is very important in a boss fight. And then it has like different phases, different patterns. The attacks are like telegraphed, so you can learn how to defeat it, you know. And yeah, the feedback that I've got from the boss is all positive. So I'm like over the moon with stuff like that. Because I remember when I first tried it, it was just terrible.
I can't imagine, like I try to simplify it in my head. Does it mean that if you are building this boss level, then it kind of involves many more exceptions, like kind of if statements or that
Yeah.
kind of stuff?
So in Unity, there's this thing called state machines. So like when the boss is in a specific state, then you can run a certain code, right? So it kind of it's a little more easier. It's not so bad. when you get to learn it, it's not that bad. It's doable. Let's just say that. But it's really fun making bosses though. It must be one of my favorite things to do actually now.
You actually touched it's an important topic, that sometimes aiming too high uh, can make you lose the motivation. And then that's when you have to take a step back and go try to do something else or take on smaller pieces. And I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've seen other people experience that they take two big pieces and they failed, which kind of makes you maybe quit the whole project.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Regarding programming, I actually remember, I don't remember when was it, but we had this one-on-one session regarding programming, right?
I was just thinking about it as well.
Yeah, and basically what happened is that I found out that Jordan's been doing game development. I was over the moon. That was really awesome. So we had a session where he showed me what this game development is all about, and he showed me the codes.
Yep.
And I will like gave pieces of my experience or advice, and actually it didn't look bad. I mean, you probably got tons of improvements to be made, but it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask now is, like, especially regarding development, how much have you looked at, like, into it more professionally? Have you read more C# specific books or tutorials or whatnot?
Yeah, I haven't read like C# specific, but I've definitely looked into like the Unity stuff, like which is more specific around the game engine, right? So there's certain methods that you can use in Unity, which are like kind of already predetermined. So like I couldn't imagine writing them myself in C#. They kind of already have these methods available. Yeah, like the scripting documentation of Unity is like my Bible at the moment. So like whenever I have, and it's really good because like when you have an idea and you plan it out a little bit, you sit down and you draw it on paper, for example, and you're thinking of like, how can I do this? And then you think, wow, I wonder if there's a method that kind of already does this, or something that exists where I can do this within the game engine. And like 9 out of 10 times it exists. So you just have to go look for it. And if you can't find it in the scripting documentation, then Stack Overflow is the next best option. So, and then that's basically how you can do everything, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you agree with me when I say that in development you cannot know anything, but you have to know how to find the correct answers or come
Yeah.
up with them. So with those. Um, so we're talking about code structure basically at the moment, right? That
Okay.
you can write your custom functions, you can have those built-in functions. But I remember you also had those really long files that contain tons of logic. Have you now like thinking differently how to structure the whole coding
Yeah.
part of it?
So from our call that we had, like, I think it must have been like 5 months ago now. It was like in the middle of
School run, I
April,
think, yeah.
March, April, something like that, right? Um, so yeah, after you said like refactoring is kind of good to do often, I actually refactored that whole code where it was like all of the player stuff. Um, I yeah, just completely destroyed it and redid it from scratch. And there's like things when you redo the code that you think, oh my god, I was doing it like twice in this code. You know what I mean? Like I was doing the same thing in two different places where if you just remove one, it wouldn't make any difference because you're already doing it there somewhere. And there's other optimizations as well that I've done, which are specifically related to the game engine and stuff like this. Because like what I used to do a lot is there's this thing called an update method which runs every frame, and that's very kind of, it drains a lot of compute, like it puts a lot of strain on the computer, right? Because there's a lot of processing power to keep running through the script every single frame. So if you have like 60 frames per second, that's a lot. And you'd be checking for stuff or doing actions that don't need to be done like every single frame. You can just do it once whenever you need it, and that's it. So there's like a lot of optimization in that sort of sense that I'm definitely much more mindful of. So like let's, as an example, let's say your health bar, yeah?
Yeah.
Like when you have, I don't know, 5 little hearts, but you lose one, you don't need to have the updating it. You can just tell, when you take damage, you can just tell the health bar just to remove one. So you only do it at once. You don't have to keep updating the health bar every frame,
Yeah.
basically.
And these are the things, well, I'm making a bold statement, but I believe these are the things you shouldn't think about in the beginning when you just start out, right? You don't know anything about programming, you just want to get something out from there. But once you achieve some kind of level, and now as you're building the game out there for others also, then optimization is a really important part of it, right? Because you don't want your, I don't know, PC to run out of battery or freeze just because a developer didn't think about optimization.
For sure. And like I've always had like a crappy PC, so I hate it
You
when
were
games.
forced to optimize it.
I bought myself a better one since then, but like when I was younger, I always used to have like a really bad PC, so I would hate it that I couldn't run like Skyrim on my PC. I had to run it on like the lowest settings ever, and I could only play for like an hour because it would get too hot and it'd crash. So like, like I was in that category of like potato PCs, so I am more mindful of that. But saying that, like I think there was a point a few months ago where I was starting to kind of overcomplicate things because you start to get, it's like almost like a rabbit hole that you get too deep into, and you start to like over engineer and spend maybe too much time on it when it's not actually needed. And yeah, recently I've been also trying to think of like how to optimize, but also like how to do it in the simplest way as well.
This, I mean, that very statement that you just said is something that I see, for example, junior developers should be aware of. Because junior developers, I mean, when I was like less experienced, I always thought like, what's the coolest way to do things? But actually, programming is about making things really simple, not over-engineer and come up with those really clever solutions, I would say. So, yeah.
Maybe it's actually like because I'm just not at that level, so I tell myself, Jordan, just keep it simple, and then it actually works out for the best.
It's really cool because when I am listening to you, I can draw so many parallels to my daily job.
That's so cool. Like to think that we started like 4 years ago on the same day,
Yeah.
and now that we can have this conversation is just mind blowing to me as well.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments with like regarding you as a developer was when we were having this discussion with other developers and we were talking about spaghetti codes and you were like, "Oh, I know what spaghetti code is."
Yeah, yeah, I had a lot of spaghetti code. I tried to clean it up.
Okay, but let's go back to the game development. Like, you now have that Kickstarter campaign
Yep.
out there.
Yep.
And you are trying to raise money to kind of sustain yourself as an indie developer and continue working on it full time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's correct.
Okay. And if you haven't seen the project before, so I'm gonna post a link in the video description below. So definitely go check out and play the game yourself. It's really awesome, and it contains really beautiful arts. Like the pixel art you've done there is super awesome.
Thanks.
The coolest part, like one of the coolest parts, is I see in your social media that people actually send their visuals or posters or drawings to you. What does how important is it for you to actually have that community behind you?
Yeah, so there's a lot of important points. Like it touches kind of motivation, like it helps me keep going. It also touches like just so I know, how would you call it? It's almost like marketing in a sense, but like so you can make a better game. Not like marketing for your benefit. It's more understanding what your audience wants and what they like. Let's say you have an idea, right? And you put it out there on social media because it doesn't matter because the game's not ready. The game's, it doesn't really matter. You just put it out there and just see how people react.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get a positive reaction, then you're like, okay, this is cool, and I can, look into it further and add it to the game and stuff like that. So it's also like a way to test what players actually want. But for motivation, I still just am mind blown by already the people that were following the project before the Kickstarter and now after the Kickstarter as well. Well, during the Kickstarter because it's only 1 week in. But honestly, I like to think that people sit there and take a few pixels and then interpret it in a way to be able to do like a drawing, and like these drawings are amazing, and it's just crazy. Like,
and they're using different style, right? I've seen photos of you. You had one painting or picture that you put on your wall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, like they change it from like 2D perspective to 3D perspective, and it's like it's so cool to be able to see something that you make be interpreted by somebody else in a different way, and it's like almost exactly what you kind of envisioned as well. It's like there's some crazy talented people out there, and yeah, I'm just mind blown every time. But
I'm just thinking here that it's not like obviously I want to see things from programming perspective, but what you've done is actually created a character, a story that people want to follow, and they take their time to create the same thing but using their own imagination.
yeah, and also I think people follow for the development as well, because a lot of people that I follow are kind of in the same boat. They are starting out in game development and stuff like that. So I think it's good to follow similar people which are in your situation, and then you can kind of help grow and build off of each other, and naturally it just kind of creates a community. But the game dev community is really something special. Like, so many people are so supportive. When I released this, all right, so like going a little bit off topic, but it's kind of related. I made a Reddit post about how I learned to do this in a year, and I just launched a Kickstarter, and it got taken down within 30 minutes. Okay, it was like almost like a blog article, so I put quite a lot of time and energy into making it, useful and kind of inspiring for other people who might.
Why did they take it down?
So they took it down because they didn't believe that I could do this in a year. that I couldn't learn how to code in a year. So at
It's a
first,
compliment, actually, in
yeah.
that sense.
So first I was very shocked because I didn't even like it was taken down in 30 minutes. I didn't even have time to like defend myself. And then after that I was thinking like, wow, that's a pretty big compliment. If these people think that it's almost impossible to do that, then that's pretty cool, right? But like to be honest, it's not that hard. Like, you know, all you have to do is you just have to be persistent. It's follow basically YouTube tutorials for like 6 months, and then you'll basically get there.
Mm-hmm. So as we are running out of times, there are a couple of questions that I'd like to ask.
Go on.
So firstly, you mentioned that you have to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
How much time, like regularly, do you put into programming or developing this game?
So because there's like different aspects of like coding, art, animation, uh, even just watching tutorials and like learning game design and level design and stuff like that. I think it probably averages out to be like 3 hours a day, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a lot. Some days I won't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Some days I might just watch a video and that's it. But then other days I could sit there for like 12 hours, like on a weekend, just doing it. So it really just varies. But most days I do something at least, whether it's watching a video or actually programming and working on the game.
What's your motivation behind it?
My motivation, I guess it's a little bit in a sense of, you know, like I kind of want to prove to myself that I can do this as well, like by myself. And also the community just really helps. Like when you put something out there and you get this consistent feedback of like people that enjoy it and like it. And when I released a demo for the Kickstarter, um, it just blew me away. Like within a week, I had 1,000 downloads, which I was planning to have like 500 over the whole 30 days, and I had like 1,000 in a week, and all of the comments were extremely positive. And like there was the stuff that they were kind of bringing out as feedback were like really really minor things that for a demo don't really matter. So like key mapping, like hey, I want to change the controls, I don't want to use the arrows, I want to use the was it WASD?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, if that's the only kind of feedback that I'm getting, then that's good. You know, that means the core game and the mechanics and stuff are actually okay.
That's pretty amazing, I'd say. And you've only been doing that for a year.
I mean, like the art, a lot of people like are kind of knock me a little bit for the art because I used to draw, and that obviously helped transition into doing pixel art. But basically, you just kind of got to work your strengths. I feel, you know, like so if you're strong at drawing art and stuff like that, then that's what you try and use most on social media and bring out. And then in the background, you're kind of learning the coding and stuff like that.
Would you say that the fact that you get to like combine programming with visuals and actually create something real is like one of the main like uh, like constant motivators for
Yeah,
you?
that also actually you make a good point. I think I mentioned this the other day when we were at the what was it? We were at some pub somewhere or some bar.
Got that part.
But like you can literally go from having like an idea for an enemy, draw it, animate it somewhat. Like if I kind of in that phase, I kind of do some rough animations. I don't do them don't spend too much time on it. And then you can kind of basically implement it in the game with code, and like literally from having the idea in the morning, by the time the afternoon comes, you've already got it implemented in the game and working. So it's like the kind of you get this immediate reward back from doing it. That is a huge motivator because it constantly kind of, at least for me, because I'm new to it, it constantly tells me like, Jordan, you can do this. You know, like you've got this. Like every single little step, and even when you get to like difficult parts, where you can't figure it out the next day or the day after. You'll eventually figure it out. You know, it's just a matter of just keep trying and keep at it.
I'm glad to hear that. There's only one more question that I have left.
Okay.
Considering that now I can actually call you a developer,
Well, I don't
amongst
know.
other things, I'm gonna ask you, what is your advice to other people out there who would like to start programming, or especially, develop their own games or products or whatnot?
I will talk from like more of a game perspective because that's all I know really at the moment. Is to start off small, and to just keep going. Basically, like don't stop. Like when we mentioned before, like sometimes you aim too high. I don't think that's not a bad thing to aim too high. It's just you have to kind of be mindful of where your skill set currently is at. So that's when you have to like take the step backwards and stuff. But basically for me, it's just following tutorials. Like that's it. I haven't spent any money on this at all. Like Unity, the game engine, is free. Tutorials on YouTube are like there's hundreds of tutorials on YouTube for this, and that's all free. It's just if you've got that drive and you keep at it, like the consistency is very important. You just have to keep trying and keep trying, and eventually you'll get there. Like I really believe, like if you want something, you'll eventually get it. As long as it's like reasonable, like I want to go to the moon. I doubt that's reasonable, but
you can develop it in a game.
yeah, exactly.
Anyways, man, it's been like, it was really great to have you here to talk about that journey, and I'm more than sure we're gonna do that in the future, because I'm telling you, I've known this guy for 4 years, and now he's a game developer. Like this is super awesome. Anyways, Jordan, thank you.
Thank you very much
for joining. And guys, go check out the Kickstarter campaign. Play the game. You'll see for yourself. It's super awesome. It's beautiful. Bye.